Madam President.
Senator from Alaska.
Madam President, I would request that floor privileges for the balance of the month be afforded to my interns, Annika Graham, Nathan Seidel, Amber Vernon, Rebecca Carney-Braveman, Samuel Ortiz, Evan Isas, Marcus Gamble, Diane Murph, Isabel Powers, Sarah Pearson, Kendall Ilo, and Ben Gilman.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I've come to the floor this morning to speak on the bipartisan Sportsmen's Act of 2014. I have been working on this bill with my colleague from North Carolina, Senator Hagan. We've been working on this bill together now for about a year. Our package is really very reflective of its name. It is a bipartisan sportsman's package. We have, as of this morning, we've got 46 members signed on in support of this legislation. I think most would agree that at this time, to have 46 members across the aisle reaching together on any issue is really quite extraordinary. And one would think that we would have a clear path forward insofar as how we can advance a measure that has really brought together a very diverse group of senators, diverse from different parts of the country. But I think it speaks to how important and how widely accepted and supported these issues are. And I think this is in no small part to the fact that America's sportsmen and sportswomen come from all over the country. They're not just in the urban, they're not just in the rural areas out in the country, but they're in the big cities, they're in urban centers, they're in the north, they're in the south. For so many of us, outdoor activities and traditions really define who we are. I don't know how it is in North Dakota, but September 1st in our household, I recognize that is Labor Day for us around the country, but for most Alaskans I know, it's opening day. It's opening day, and it's when everybody is getting ready to go out duck hunting. And then you've got moose season, you've got caribou season. We define our seasons not by the calendar, but by really what is happening with hunting. Right now, in my state, all that anyone is talking about is fishing. The Reds are running on the Kenai. That's where I'm going to be this weekend with my husband. Last week, it was all about the Kings on the Nushagak. This morning, the article in the newspaper around the state is about an angler, sports angler, who caught a 482-pound halibut off of Gustavus. And it described the individual, the fisherman, as a 77-year-old man who came up to the state. This is his third visit to Gustavus because he really likes going out for the halibut. And I will tell you, for a small community like Gustavus, to have fishermen come in to their town and bring the dollars that they do, this is big for us. This helps our economy. It's not only fun, it is really an economic driver in so many parts of my state. So whether it's hunting or whether it's fishing, these are issues that Alaskans care about. I think they are also issues that people in North Dakota care about, people in Virginia and Maryland and all over the country. So what we have done in this very bipartisan bill is combined a host of measures that speak to some of the regulatory reforms that will provide for greater access for our sportsmen and women, whether on the water or on the land, whether it is the Hunting and Fishing and Recreational Shooting Protection Act, the Target Practice and Marksmanship Training Support Act, which provides for revenues and dollars to help with hunter education programs, very important for us around the country. Electronic duck stamps, Farmer and Hunter Protection Act, Hunting Heritage Opportunities Act, again, all provisions and measures that Senator Hagan and I have worked to kind of build these initiatives into one package to focus on how we can do more to provide for greater access for our sportsmen and women around the country. But we also provide for some very important conservation principles. We include the North American Wetlands Conservation Act and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation reauthorization, some very important measures. We have a provision that we've included from Senator Heinrich, the Federal Land Transaction Facilitation Act reauthorization. So it's not just on the access side, but it's also focused on the conservation side as well. So very strong support not only within this body, but also within sports organizations all over the country. Some 42 different organizations have come together to sign a letter in support of advancing this measure through the Senate. We spent a lot of time here on the Senate floor talking about, well, we might be able to advance something in the Senate, but we don't know how it's going to fare on the House side. Well, let me tell you how it's fared on the House side. We've already seen good action. Similar legislation that was sponsored by the congressman from Ohio, Congressman Lotta, passed the House on February 5th of this year by over 100-vote margin. So clearly the support is not only bipartisan, it's bicameral. So what we have done working together with Senator Hagan and her good staff, we've worked really hard to try to coordinate these efforts to ensure that the House and Senate bills are closely aligned so that when we move something out of here, we don't have to guess as to what might happen. We know that we're going to have good, strong support. So, Madam President, I am obviously very, very hopeful that we can complete our work on this bill. But before we complete the work on the bill, we got to be able to start work on the bill. But I also recognize that unless we can agree to an open and a fair amendment process where we actually take some votes around here on amendments offered by folks on both sides, that we're probably unlikely to make progress on this bill. And I think that that is very unfortunate, because I know that there are a lot of folks in my state that are hoping that we're going to move on this, that are saying, you know, if the Senate can't come together on something like a bipartisan sportsman's package where you've got 46 members coming together to do this, wow, how are they going to do anything? We need to be able to demonstrate that we can work together on some of these initiatives where there is a good level of consensus. So I hate to be in the place where we are right now about arguing about whether or not we're going to be able to take up any relevant amendments. I want us to take up these relevant amendments. I like the bill that Senator Hagan and I worked on. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't be standing here trying to advance it and encourage my colleagues that we move forward to it. But I also know that as good as Senator Hagan and I are on representing these issues, we don't have all the monopoly on the good ideas. We don't have the monopoly on all of the things that are coming from different parts of the country. We need to have that input from our colleagues. And I will remind you that the measure in front of us is not a measure that has gone through that full committee process. This is a measure that has advanced to the floor through a process known as Rule 14, where it hasn't had the benefit of members advancing their amendments through the committee process. So I want to have an amendment process. I want to have the debate on some of the measures that we have in front of us. I want to stand and tell people why I think it's important that we provide for additional access for our sportsmen and women on our public lands, and what we can be doing more to help incent that. But we've got to have that amendment process. And many of my colleagues know we've been here before. We have been here before as recently as 2012. It was a very highly frustrating experience. We had a similar sportsman's bill that was bogged down in basically it was political posturing late last Congress, and it didn't go anywhere as a result. So with that history in mind and knowing what we went through in 2012, I decided last July in 2013, I decided to introduce my own Sportsman's package. And what I really wanted to try to do is I figured, okay, let's see if we can't take some of the politics out of this measure. Try to be very bipartisan, try to be non-political. I felt that as the ranking member of the committee with jurisdiction on this, and as one who wasn't up for election at this point in time, I was in perhaps a good spot to maybe lead this thing forward. And so we put the ideas out there. In November, Senator Hagan introduced her own bill, the Sport Act, and what became very apparent to both of us was that if we continued down this two-track path, we would not be successful in passage. And so Senator Hagan and I agreed. We know what the goal is, passage of good bipartisan legislation. So we sought middle ground. We put together what we think is common sense. We took good ideas that both of us had, we melded them together, and we put it together with what we think is the best interest of the sportsmen's community around the country in mind. And then we went out and we recruited our co-sponsors. We secured the time for floor consideration, and now we're here caught in the same argument about whether or not relevant amendments from our caucuses should be allowed. And my answer on this is pretty simple. It's just flat out yes. Yes, of course, relevant amendments should be allowed. Yes, we should actually be doing our job here in the United States Senate as taking good ideas from both sides and advancing a package that, again, hasn't gone through the traditional path of a committee process. Senator Hagan and I have, again, built this, and many of our colleagues agree with us, otherwise they would not have signed on as co-sponsors. We greatly appreciate their support. But again, I think it's important to get their perspectives on this initiative before we take a final vote on the bill. And I do want to be very clear, because I heard some comments this morning that Republicans are somehow or other filibustering this bill. I just find that kind of stunning, I guess. The Republican conference is absolutely prepared to vote on all relevant amendments. We've got a list. Last evening when I left, there was a list of 13 that had been filed this morning. That list has grown. It's doubled. It's probably growing as we speak. But, Madam President, let's get moving on these relevant amendments, these amendments that are tied to the bill itself. And it's not just Republican amendments. We have a good handful of them that I would like to see advanced. They are amendments on both sides. And some of these amendments are very relevant to specific states. I know that Senator Landrieu has an amendment that's very unique to Louisiana. It's the Kisatchie National Forest Deer Hunting Amendment, very specific to Louisiana. It wasn't included in the package that Senator Hagan and I built because we were trying to do a broader, more comprehensive, national in scope. But if Senator Landrieu feels that this is an important piece to have, she should have an opportunity to weigh in on that. Senator Cardin and Senator Crapo have introduced an amendment, the National Fish Habitat Conservation Act. Again, a bipartisan amendment led by Senator Cardin, clearly relevant to this measure. Why would we not want to have the opportunity to advance some of these provisions that members feel will enhance a bill that already has good, strong support? So I want to make sure that members know that I am fully committed to a full and open amendment process, that Republicans would like to see a full and open amendment process, and that we get moving. Instead of talking about getting moving, we're actually going to I thank those who have come forward and offered their support for this measure. A lot of work has gone into crafting the bill, but I'm fearful, Madam President, that once again we're at risk of basically being cast aside because of political concerns. So I would ask the Majority Leader to reconsider his view that relevant amendments are too difficult to vote on. We have to return to regular order. We have to have a fair and healthy debate on legislation, especially legislation like this that has not gone through the committee process, has good, strong support, but needs to have further input from members all over the country. So I appreciate the consideration of the body here in trying to advance a measure that will help us not only when it comes to access for our fishermen and our sportsmen and women, provides for further conservation measures, but also, Madam President, helps us advance a process in this body that at this time is so desperately lacking. And with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.